Friends, can I have your attention? I want to thank everybody for coming. I know people are still coming in, which is great. We got a lot to cover, and we're going to start promptly at 10, so I'm asking folks to take their seat. Also, we know that there's a lot less people here today in town because of the holiday weekend, a lot of people traveling. So I want to welcome everybody in who's live streaming on our website or Facebook or other media platforms. If you weren't here last week, there was one handout that we had, and I'm going to give you a moment to come forward. If you can't come forward, I'll bring it to you. But there's one handout that we worked through from last week. It looks like this. So it has the 9 values. It has the congregational and stakeholder feedback. It has the 4-year timeline. And it has the campus master plan in narrative form. All of this is online as well. You may have seen an email blast from Stephanie Lane, who put together a Dropbox link and who put together a link for this document and then the presentation itself. So if you did not see it, I'm strongly encouraging you to go back and look and watch and look at the deck of slides, because what we only did last week was cover the process leading up to the campus master plan. No pictures were shown, no floor plans. That begins today. I was actually pleased, if you were here last week, there was an audible sigh when I said we're not looking at pictures today. So if you missed that, you really should go back and look at the narrative that got us here. Because sometimes in the life of a large church or life of any larger organization, there's work going on that we're privy to and there's work going on that we're not privy to. And this work has been going on for the past 4 years. And so it's really important to put all that in perspective, to have that long view so that when you see pictures and slides today, you'll understand where that all is rooted. Does that make sense? I also want to say one other thing. I had a great conversation with a lifelong member of the church who's has architectural sort of instincts and is an engineer and is in his 30s and brings great wisdom and insight. I think it needs to be said that every building, every physical structure that is built in its time, and it can never escape that, right? And so if we use language that may seem disparaging to a part of the campus, we're doing our best not to do that, but people are going to interpret what they want to interpret when they're going to want to interpret it. We recognize that the campus itself has been built over 100 years, has been added onto over 100 years, and that it served its purposes for its time and for our time. And now what we're considering is new ways and new opportunities, the way that when in their day was new. Think about that church moving from Marietta Street, planning the new campus here, how bold and brave that was. Not having any physical structures built until they built what was on the Worth Room in their first worship space and eventually the sanctuary in 1919. It was that they built and took a step forward and designed something and lived into something that they really felt God was calling them to do. So that's the work we're doing. I hope you can keep an open hand and an open mind around that. Does that make sense? That we understand that the building was the building at the time it was built and has been what it's been for time. What we're leaning into is what's possible into the future. So what we've done in the last week and what we're going to do this week and next week is combine this conversation with our Founders Day. We celebrate our founding in 1848 every January, and we've asked individuals. Last week, Susan Doherty gave us a little devotional. Today, Moncure Crowder, one of our resident historians and archivists, is going to give a little bit of history on the sanctuary just to get us into the conversation about what's next. So let's welcome Moncure.
Good morning. I'm going to have to do one of the hardest things it is for me to do. I'm going to have to be brief. But Tony's the main show. I first of all want to express, and I know I speak for our chairman, Cheryl Hughes, and all the other members of the Archives and History Committee, how pleased we are that the decision has been made to expand the protected area of the church from the sanctuary to all of the historic core. I think as the years go by, the wisdom of this decision will prove itself over and over and over. I've been on the History Committee now for 10 years. We've done many presentations about our windows. I cannot remember that we've ever done another presentation about our architecture. So the subject for the next very few minutes is going to be the architecture of our sanctuary. Here's a view with which you're all familiar from Peachtree Street, looking at the front of the sanctuary and the bell tower. Did you know that the architecture of our church is called Gothic Revival? This means that the sanctuary revives some of the features that were created for the great Gothic churches of Europe built many centuries ago. The primary features of Gothic architecture are the extensive use of stone, and in our case, a beautiful brown sandstone. Vertical accents such as columns, buttresses, and of course, bell towers. And in particular, the use of the pointed arch, such as the one you see in our large Christ Return window. Here's a church with which you're familiar. It's one of the most famous in the world, Notre Dame in Paris. It's the front of their church. They happen to have two towers. One of the best-known early Gothic cathedrals was constructed from 1160 to 1260. Gothic architecture evolved in the High Middle Ages out of Romanesque or Roman architecture. It was followed at the end of the Middle Ages by Renaissance architecture. The easiest way to tell if an early church is Romanesque or Gothic is to look at its arches. If they're round, they're Romanesque. If they're pointed, such as at Notre Dame, they're Gothic. Gothic churches were built of very heavy stone, and the invention of the pointed arch modified the outward pressure on the walls, which allowed it to build taller structures. Here's the interior front of our sanctuary. And if you look around our sanctuary, you will see that every arch is pointed. Some of them, especially the tops of our windows, are very subtle, but they all have a point. Note the arches above the organ and the upper ceilings, they all have points. Here's the rear of the sanctuary, which has pointed arches all across the rear. The next time you're in the sanctuary, look up at the beams above, and you'll notice that they have pointed arches. Even the two long beams going from the front to the rear of the sanctuary have a pointed arch. Here's another view of Notre Dame, and obviously these were before the tragic fire, that shows the side and the rear. And it also shows one of the most striking inventions of the Gothic period, the flying buttress. Flying buttresses were designed along with the pointed arch to offset the stress of the heavy roof that would push outward on the walls and again allow for building taller structures. We don't have flying buttresses, but we do have cosmetic buttresses. If you're on 16th Street, take a look and you'll see 6 prominent buttresses that enclose and separate our 5 windows. There's another feature here also, which is called coining. That's spelled Quoining. And coining is the insertion of special blocks at the corners of structures in order to provide strength and stability. And if you get closer to this picture, you can see, if you look at the very corners of the buttresses, you can see special blocks that have been inserted in that way. Here's a detail of the tower that's also part of our original church, and here you can see the coining blocks very clearly in the corner of the structure. Coining was used initially on the outside. It came over from the Roman period and was used in Gothic, but it's also used on the inside of structures. And our architect, Walter T. Downing, seemed to like coining because it's used all over the core of our church. You'll see here around the doorways, those blocks that are set into the concrete, those are limestone coining blocks. And you will also note that all of the arches in the narthex are pointed. Here's a look at the pulpit and organ area, and you will notice the coining. All of the vertical external corners all over the sanctuary have these blocks inserted in them if you just look up and down. And one of the things that the architect did was that he did this in such a way that no vertical column is like any other. And I shouldn't admit this, but there are times when I'm sitting in the sanctuary looking to see if I can find two columns that are the same, and so far I have not been able to do. This is not, of course, during the sermon, but here's a final look at what the coining looks like around our windows. And again, this ends our quick look at some of the characteristics of our sanctuary, and it is a real jewel in our church, and I think that we're going to be wonderfully happy in the future that we have this. One final note, I've got to give a plug for our Tiffany Talk and Tour coming up on February the 1st. As we leave, I think there'll be some flyers at the door, and I'll give you a tip. If you're going to this program, get there early and sit as close to the center of the sanctuaries as you can, because that way you get the best view of the windows.
Thanks, Moncure. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm so thankful for our Archives and History Committee and the information, especially through this process. I named this last week, how important it is to have access to our origins, our history, not just from a theological perspective or ecclesiastical perspective, but also physically, to be able to draw the lines between what happened on this campus 100 years ago and what's happening today. So as we begin this second presentation, let me begin with a slide that if you were here last week or you saw the video replay on demand, one of the most important slides in any deck that you'll see as we're talking about our campus master plan. Because we want to clarify what a campus master plan is and is not. It is not final drawings. It's not the final details. It is what is going to absolutely be into the future. A campus master plan is really a roadmap. It's a guiding document that guides the decision-making process for the physical development of the campus. It helps us ask the right questions. It helps us move in the right direction. Because we believe that the campus has the potential to manifest the mission and values of the church. We believe that we can express who we are through our physical structures. That to manifest the mission and values of the church, the plan covers physical spaces, open spaces, circulation and gathering, transportation and parking, and sustainability. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the campus master plan. That's what we're talking about as the fruit of the labor over the last 2 years of the campus master planning process, which was born out of the previous 2 years to that our long-range strategic planning process. It all links together. Last week, I walked through, and again, I have a handout if you weren't here last week. I walked through the building blocks of the plan. Those things were very known to us: the long-range strategic plan, the 9 values, and then the congregational feedback. I used the language of a 3-legged stool that sort of allows the plan to be propped up. That's what the heart, that's the DNA of the plan, is the long-range strategic plan, the 9 values, and then the congregational feedback, which came from over 700 members and stakeholders in a larger community. That's how this plan was built. But I also want to note, while that is known, there is a lot that is unknown. And this slide has been helpful as we've been rolling out the plan in leadership, and now as we roll it out in a larger way. I know this red dot's small for those in the back, but we are in the project planning stage. And if you see this ice cream cone here, this is really helpful. This is our friend. Think of ice cream. Think of happy. There's a lot that is unknown right now. There's a lot that's unknown. There's things that we do know. There's things that we don't know. But just so you're aware, we only know about that much, right there and there, right? As we move through this process, if the way be clear and if the Spirit leads us through and continues to open doors for us to make this possible, then we will continue to know more and more. But right now, we're in that first 6 month to 2 years. And we really feel like we're in 6-month period, even though the campus master planning team has been working for over 2 years. It wasn't until we hired Hauser Walker to lead this programming phase that we really felt like the clock started. So the clock started, and they came on board in May. And so we're in this 6-month, 8-month window right now. Does that make sense? So there's a lot that we don't know. One thing that we do know are our values. And we know in a narrative form, and this is what was handed out last week, in a narrative form, we know and have a sense of what those values might spawn, what those values might bring to life. We have pictures, we have floor plans, we have some ideas of how these values can come alive in the world. And so the presentation today and next week is going to walk through as many values as we can. I'm only going to do 2 today, but I will say that these first 2, not that there's an importance sort of ranking from 1 to 9, but these first 2 cover a substantial amount of the plan. There's other values like broadcast, where I don't have many pictures to show you, or technology. I'm not going to show you IT infrastructure maps. That's not what we're going to look at. So today, we're going to take our time going through 2 values, because you're going to see much of what the campus might look like through these 2 first values: hospitality and tangible compassion. Okay? So we'll begin with hospitality. The master plan transforms the sense of the campus as a quote-unquote fortress to be more open, invitational, and hospitable by increasing the visibility of the interior life through transparency, open interiors, more intuitive entrances, and more invitational exterior spaces. Number 2, improving accessibility throughout the campus. Number 3, creating new, welcoming common areas that are integrated with campus circulation. And number 4, intuitive line of sight circulation with open stairs, making wayfinding simple for members and visitors, enhancing the sense of safety and belonging. Part of our experience at the First Presbyterian Church of Atlanta is the experience of Peachtree Street. If you've been here your whole life, this kind of fades into the background. But if you're here in a day-to-day way, and you're here like the staff is, and you see the amount of people when you're outside walking up and down Peachtree who come to that door, or the door by the Founders Hall, the chapel, or the door in the sanctuary and try to get in. If you had a dime for every time you saw that, you'd be pretty wealthy over a year. We are on the major thoroughfare of Atlanta, in the heart of North Midtown, and we are locked down on Peachtree Street, Monday through Friday. Other experiences that folks have of our physical, it's in a very intimidating physical structure. In some places, there's even walls that block, there's shrubbery that blocks line of sight. There's fencing that also gives the impression of where the world begins and where we begin, or where we begin and where we end, if that makes sense. The other experience, maybe not so much this doesn't touch you as much as this slide will. None of these slides are in duplicate. Our campus essentially was built with a very utilitarian purpose. Create classroom space in the 1960s. Create a large group fellowship space in the 1960s, right? Building a preschool or expanding preschool. Building the Smith building. So over time, what happened just by a result of very utilitarian, I think missional purposes, was how do we meet the needs of these programs? We built hallways and attached rooms to them. And this is the experience of many folks who are coming on our campus for the first time, and you as members who are experiencing in a regular way. There's nothing sort of inviting about this per se. It's very utilitarian. It gets you to where you need to go. There's no space organically, you saw that as one of the values, to stop and to talk. You can stop and talk in the hallway, but it is inconvenient as people walk past each other. And because there's so many hallways leading in so many different directions, it's possible for you to come on campus, to get to worship, to go to a Sunday school class, and really not talk to anybody except those you said hello to in your Sunday school class and in that time of worship. And maybe you like that. Maybe you want that. But not everybody wants that, and that's not necessarily, I think, what it means to live into hospitality, where more of these organic conversations and more people bumping into each other can take place. So these two experiences, these visuals, give us a sense of what we're aiming at overcoming and reimagining in our future. So this is a view from Peachtree Street. This is, as Moncure said, the historic core of the church. Let me repeat this. You're going to hear me say this a lot. The historic core is the bride's room, which is here. The chapel is behind it. Founders Hall in our tower, and the sanctuary. That is the historic core of the church. What you see here is imagined a 3-story hub of the campus, a community center, an atrium that has a door on Peachtree Street that is open Monday through Friday and has our security and information desk right here inside. A space that anchors the campus together. A space that when you're standing in it, you know exactly where you are. Because you can see outside to the chapel, and you can see even toward Arts Center Way. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. This is not Fifield Hall. This is where part of where Fifield Hall is currently. This would be a brand new 400-seat worship and performance space that would be coveted for our neighbors and our partners, and not just for us as members. We imagine worship being in there, the 9 o'clock service being in there, or other services that we might be able to do, but be able to have a high-quality, acoustically perfect performance space as we really embrace our plot of land here in the Arts District in North Midtown. All of what you see from here to here is new construction. Nothing is repurposed here. So from the current Worth Room all the way through Fifield Hall that's new construction. Inside of that atrium would be exposed staircases, again, glass windows to look out, for people to look in, to say, oh, there's actually things happening in the life of the church, Monday through Friday and on Sunday as well. That information desk, this space here from a square footage perspective could seat 300 people at tables. You could seat almost as much in tables in that new 400-seat room as well. So if you just think about the larger funerals or the weddings that we have, or the larger gathering spaces where we ask people to traverse hallways to get down to this space, there would be a natural organic flow right from the sanctuary doors into this space. And if we needed the larger room as well, we could use that as well. From an aerial view, What you'll notice in some of the drawings is really the openness and the light that we desire to come into the campus. Exteriors being more dramatic, more inviting, more welcoming. You see that 3-story glass atrium here. You saw the glass doors here that could open up on this porch. You see glass here. I'm going to show you some more pictures. Glass here on the Smith building. Just to orient, where 16th is here. This is Peachtree. This is the driveway. This is our Art Center Way parking lot. But you see the glass integrated in a new way to open up the campus, to let light in, and again, to create these welcome and dramatic entry points. You'll also notice on the streetscape the access points for those with physical disabilities and challenges. I'm going to show you a slide in just a minute of the places where you couldn't get in with a wheelchair if you have disabilities. But right here, I want you to just note the walkway, the ramp here, a ramp here to get up, and a ramp here, making Peachtree totally accessible with every door that we have here, okay? From the back side, just to orient you, this is, again, Art Center Way. There are going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 towers built on the MARTA station at Art Center Way. That plan is in process. We have folks who are members of our church who are actively working on that. It could be a combination of residential, commercial, hospitality, and most likely will be some form of those three uses that are going literally in our backyard, which is forcing us to say, what is our front door? And the reality is that we have multiple front doors. And so not only do we want to make Peachtree a front door, but we also want to make this accessible and attractive to what's going to become a huge increase in foot traffic and exposure to the church from these 4 towers. What you see here is actually a second level. It's a hat. This is not the surface lot. The surface lot is below because we've figured out a way, I say we, like I'm the architect. We have figured out a way to add 35 spaces to the Art Center lot, knowing that that is a coveted thing for our members, particularly those with physical challenges, older members. We don't have a parking problem at First Presbyterian Church. We have an on-site parking problem, right? We have plenty of parking every Sunday morning. But it's hard for certain folks to park across the street. We imagine that on a Sunday morning, many of these spaces we would not just have designated for ADA, for handicap, but also have special signs that for people with special needs who need to park close to the building. So this is a second level. What you also will note here too that's important is that this building right here, where the red dot is, ends here and is only 2 stories. This is a 3rd story and an extension, new construction. So this is a 3rd story because the 1st story is underneath on the same level as our current surface lot. Does that make sense? So this building will be 3 stories. The preschool envelope will be here, and we expand it with a 2-lane driveway connecting Art Center, 2-lane, not just one, connecting Art Center and Peachtree Street. This gives us, I see a lot of preschool families, this gives us the capacity to go full day, which is a desire for both the preschool and for the church so that we can expand our programming and reach more people. This is a brand new 8,000 square foot playground. Please note too, and I'm going to talk more about this with environment and the green roofs, possibly having water capturing systems on those green roofs. Please also note, as I said last week, that all the gardens not only remain intact, they become more accessible and more exposed. This is the Robinson Garden. It becomes bigger. It's on the lower level. And this is a new playground. This is the Dupree Garden. See the Duprees here. And this is the Memory Garden. And the Memorial Garden you saw from the front still remains intact, but we open it up. It'll be defined. We don't know what the architecture will be for that landscape. We want to make it defined, but we also don't want to make it wardened off to people. Okay, giving them an opportunity to experience that garden. It's a sacred space on our campus. So all the gardens are not only maintained, but they're actually expanded in terms of use and exposure, which was a point of feedback we heard from the congregation. Dramatic entry now, this is a street level. Arts Center Way goes down the hill, right? Do you all know that, right? So this level will be level with the street, so you can just walk right off. A guest no longer has to come up a fire escape to get to our community ministries. I've said this, and at the risk of maybe offending some folks, it's the most unchristian thing that we do on our campus. To make people wait outside in the rain and in the elements, make them go up an inaccessible fire escape to get to our community services. I'm pretty sure that's not what Jesus wants us to do. This creates a dramatic entry that can come right here to the second level. Do you see it's second level Smith? Right into the second level in a dramatic entrance. Offices would be accessed through here. The preschool would be accessed through here through a key card and buzzing system. Beautiful entry points for all three of the largest constituents that we have in a week-to-week, at a day-to-day basis. The preschool families, our community ministry guests, the staff, and those who they're seeing on campus. You see that dramatic entrance here coming off of Arts Center Way. Robinson Garden is down below. This is looking from, your back is at the high. You're looking across. Right now, what's disorienting is that there's only a staircase that goes down. This staircase will be built and go up. Another dramatic entry point as all the people from the high are out on the porch and they're looking, they see something that has symmetry with where they're standing into where we are, and exposed glass to see. Also, this is an important thing when I get to tangible compassion, why there would be light here. This is the community ministries floor. This would be a brand new, what we call third space, like a cafe. Refuge Coffee might go in there. We'll have the bookstore in there and be open in a more regular way during the week for members and guests alike. And so this too will have a ramp here that will make the Smith building accessible. Right now, this part of our property is not accessible. So you could go down steps, you go up steps. Again, a dignified entrance for our community ministries guests, a hospitable entrance to come in here. Most likely, we'd have a security guard here as well. Two places. We have two security guards every day in different spots. They would have a spot here and in that space on Peachtree Street, right out here in that atrium. Okay? This would get you to the School of Fine Arts up these stairs. You could also take the elevator bank that's in here as well. This gives you a different perspective from the corner. Again, open. You see the openness that comes with this new design, the streetscapes being open. The plan is to save these beautiful oak trees out there. You'll see them on floor plans. They're shadows. They're big shadows casting. And if we can't, we certainly are going to live into the best practices for the city of Atlanta and plant new trees there. So our goal, though, is to save those trees as part of this plan. You see it from another angle. Signage, lower wall, access points with ramps. This is a water feature. Someone told me early on, when you see a water feature, don't believe that it's going to be there in the future. Water's hard to maintain. What's beautiful about this design, our architect, who is a Christian, thought theologically about this and has built a natural aqueduct into this room that could bring that water in for baptism when we celebrate baptism. And this room can be configured in any way. There is a stage, but it can be configured in any way and designed to be configured in any way. And then an aerial view. You see the porch. This is something that was coveted in our conversations as a team, sort of living into our southern hospitality, the porch as being a place where people can gather. Imagining these glass doors also opening onto Peachtree Street. You see again how the streetscape opens up. You see the chapel more, bride's room, and the sanctuary architecture is exposed when you're inside the building, which I think is a beautiful feature. Hospitality. Here's our existing. On a Sunday morning, you come in from Midtown Plaza, which is over here. You come in from our Arts Center deck, which is over here. Perhaps you come in if you walk from 16th Street down. You come into the Founders Hall or the front of the sanctuary. With this, you can see the yellow. There's more flow, there's more designed entry points, and more bumping into each other within this scheme. When it comes to wayfinding and visible destinations, this is one of our biggest challenges. Coming to crossroads because of these hallways in these rooms. A lot of times you're coming to these crossroads and we can put all the signs we want up, we have, and people still, they're standing at a crossroads and say, where's the sanctuary? Because they have no idea where they are. They're coming as a guest, they're coming as somebody who's new to the church visiting. We have a lot of these points. We have 5 of them, in fact, where you have to come to like a crossroads, you have to make a decision. What we're trying to do here is have the flow come toward the middle of the campus, so that there's this organic hub that people naturally come together in and bump into each other. Accessibility, as I said, you can't get into Fifield, you can't get into Founders Hall. You can get into the front door of the sanctuary up this ramp. You can't get into this vestibule. You can't get into the side door. You can't get into the door off the 16th Street exit. This is where I said where we put our community ministry guests come up. They can't get in that way. This is accessible, and this into the preschool is accessible. What we've done is opened up accessibility points. You see all the green lights. That means go. That means people can get in if they have disabilities or physical challenges. All of these spots. These I'll talk about in a minute, why they're still red. But on Peachtree Street, now we have all of our Peachtree Street frontage would be accessible. From a hospitality perspective, it talks about these common areas. Just for orientation, this is the Smith Building. This is the lower level. This is the cafe, the third space down here. What we would do with my office, this is where the administrative offices are, right along here, coming up to archives room to the sanctuary. Everybody had the orientation. This would become, on the lower level, the adult Sunday school and adult multipurpose room space with the cafe here and another carve out to gather in small groups or to gather before you go into your classroom. So you're not doing your hallway into your rooms. On this lower level, we heard feedback from some of our older members who don't want to traverse the elevator. They don't want to traverse the stairs. They want to be on one level, and they want to bump into other members who are in other classes. What this does is it gives us this community sense and this hub of adult ed. So all these 12s, by the way, all the floor plans are going to be online after this presentation, even the ones that I don't show you today. And they all have keys, so you can see and get a closer look of what each room will be. But this will be like a little coffee area. This will be a hub. And one person may say, well, what Sunday school class are you going to? Well, I'm going to this one. Oh, maybe I'll go to that one instead of this one today, and have them all here. We also see within this atrium, this is the atrium, that 3-story space. This is that 400-seat hall. You see these little tables. You see these informal gathering spaces where people can come together and they can talk and they can build community together in a hospitable, welcoming kind of way. Please note, again, the gardens and the historic core of the church, Founders Hall, chapel, bride's room, and sanctuary, all preserved. Okay? 2, tangible compassion. This is the second goal. The master plan expands the capacity of First Pres's compassionate ministries by significantly expanding on-campus affordable and subsidized housing capacity. Right now, that scope of ministry is up to 12 women. Do you know this? In our Women's Transition Center, our Women's Transformation Center. That's where we're at capacity right now. Doubling the capacity of community ministries programming, improving the dignity of the delivery of community ministry programs, providing a new space to handle medical emergencies with direct street access. So we thought it would be helpful to just review, because I know a lot of us know we have something called community ministries, and I know many of us in this room are deeply connected. But there's some of us who don't know anything about what's happening in community ministries, and I want to give you a sense of the size and the scale of the outreach. We serve over 700 individuals a month. 700 individuals a month, many of whom are working poor or experiencing homelessness. 250 gathered this morning for breakfast. But 700 individual people we're serving a month. Our on-site ministries include the Women's Transformation Center, which is up to 12 women at a time. with a full-time social worker. This is all the church. This is not an outside 501c3. This is the church. Emergency rental assistant. Addresses. We get about 800 people's mail here because if you're homeless, experiencing homelessness, you need a place to get your disability check or to say, this is where I can get information about the new job I'm starting. You need an address. Documentation, IDs, veterans benefits, mentoring, redemption after prison program, laundry, food pantry, showers, a barber, men's clothing closet, foot care, medical care with our partnership with Mercy Care, who comes once a week to provide medical care. The public defender's office is here to help people navigate the justice system where they need to. The Sunday morning breakfast, transportation assistance with MARTA cards, access to subsidized or free counseling through the Samaritan Counseling Center. And then we're part of Atlanta's continuum of care to end chronic homelessness. I mean, these are words on a paper and numbers on a screen, but these are real lives, 700 people a month that we are engaging with in some form of ministry, whether it's social service or spiritual ministries. The breadth and depth of what happens here from Monday to Friday, I don't think it can be captured in one slide. I know it can't. But this is at the heart of who this church is in so many different ways. We have 5 full-time employees, 1 pastor, 2 social workers, an administrator, and a logistics coordinator, and 1 part-time employee, and over 100 regular volunteers in this ministry. And our budget allocated $635,000 for our community ministries, which is 11% of our operating budget. It's a tithe for community ministries. But also be mindful that this doesn't include other commitments that we make through the session, through like Habitat for Humanity, or through the Georgia Justice Project, or through Johnson C. Smith Seminary, or through the many global partnerships that we have. This is just community ministries. A true tithe of every dollar that comes in supports that particular work. And one of the most pressing and challenging and defining issues impacting those we serve is housing. There's not a person that we engage with that does not have some issue related to housing. If you are a volunteer, I see some of our volunteers here at the phone, the number one call that they get day to day is in reference to housing. Housing. Do you have any? Do you have assistance? Where is there inventory where I can use my voucher? I had to choose between paying for my kids' medicine or paying for rent this month. Those are the calls. Those are the stories that we hear week in and week out. So homelessness, rental assistance, choice between paying rent or buying food, the Women's Transformation Center, the lack of inventory for persons with vouchers from the city who have vouchers to get started, who have even a job, kind of like the women that we help here on campus. That is one of the most pressing issues that they face, is that they have money, they have work, but they can't find inventory. They can't find a place that will take their voucher. The working poor who can't afford to live near to where they work. Come to our food pantry one day, you're going to meet the working poor. People who work in Midtown, in some place here in Midtown, workforce folk who live in Woodstock and have to commute here. And you know, when you have to commute here an hour and a half, that costs money. Money they could otherwise be spending on food. So every person that we encounter, every person that we engage with, housing is one of the key core elements of how we're helping and the conversations we're having. Now, if you've lived in Atlanta for some time, you know that one of the most pressing challenges and defining issues impacting our city is housing. Atlanta's population is increasing, but new housing construction is focused on higher cost demand. In 2017, Atlanta was the 3rd fastest growing metropolitan region in the U.S. As our population grows, many of our long-term residents are experiencing challenges related to affordable housing, particularly as much of the new residential development has focused on higher cost units. Average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in Atlanta has eclipsed $1,000 per month. somewhere north of 80% of people who work on the Peachtree Corridor, so that's from downtown to Buckhead, can't afford to live within a reasonable commute of their jobs. 80%. While our economy has grown over the last decade, wages have not kept pace with rising rents. Between 2000 and 2017, Atlanta's median rent increased by over 70%, but Atlanta's median income only increased by 48%. There's a growing gap between what people can afford versus what people are making. As housing costs have grown, more Atlantans have been forced to spend a greater percentage of their income on housing costs. In 2016, more than half of Atlantans were considered housing cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on housing. We have an opportunity as a church, and we have an asset as a church to meet the housing challenges we face in community ministries, and this is two-pronged, to meet the housing challenges that we face in community ministries and do our part to help the city that we love, the city that God has planted us in, to meet one of the most pressing needs facing every urban context today. We can be a leader in this conversation and take the next step in serving our neighbors with a bold and transformational vision. Before I flip to the next slide, where is Sarah Kirsch? Is she in the room? Sarah, just stand up. Sarah Kirsch is here to answer questions after worship. Sarah's not part of our long-range strategic plan. She's a child of this church, grew up in this church. She's the CEO of the Urban Lands Institute of Atlanta. There are two people in our congregation that no one knows more about these challenges than Sarah Kirsch and Jack Harden. Jack is not here today. But those two have said, we want to be a part of the solution that our church can provide. And they know, I almost said everything. They know almost everything about the housing challenges that our city faces today. And I am so thankful that their confidence and their support, Jack Harden, who has been at the tip of the spear in leading an end to chronic homelessness, and Sarah, who is imagining with other nonprofits how we can be a solution, both of them have given 100% support to what you're about to see. That we have the possibility to build a 13-story housing facility at 1337, our East Campus, to provide 110 units of affordable housing, supportive housing, or workforce housing, or some combination of them. This is the space that you see, this sliver here. And I know you think that's impossible to build something that small. We just saw a news story, a national story come out where what they're calling slim houses or narrow houses is becoming a trend to take surface lots in cities. You don't see surface lots in New York City. If we were in New York City 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there ought to be a building on that. But surface lots in cities that continue to emerge like Atlanta, building properties particularly for affordable housing. So this is our parking garage, and this is the surface lot where that tower could go. This is the view from Peachtree Street to that surface lot. There potentially would be a 10-foot, there'd have to be a 10-foot walkway between the Reed House and this 13-story building. You see it here. It's not necessarily going to look like this. Just draw these things. Again, it's a campus master plan to give us an idea of what's possible, and we know that this is possible on our campus. Again, we're living here. We're living here right now, but we know it's possible. Now, who might live there? People naturally are going to ask that question, and Sarah and I have gone back and forth about, should we actually put this slide up there? Because once you see it in writing or you see a picture, like, oh, that's what's going to happen. That's what it's going to look like. That's what it's going to be. But we do also understand that it's hard to conceptualize something like this, and who are the type of people. But women who are part of our transformation center, we can increase our capacity dramatically and provide a more dignified experience for our women. Look, our women are grown ladies. They come to this campus sometimes out of an abusive relationship, and they have to live with two other people, dorm style. They don't have their own kitchen. And I'm not demeaning anybody who's prepared a meal for the Women's Transformation Center. It's important, but we're about dignity and we're about empowerment. And these women don't have privacy. They have to be here at a certain time. They can't come and go as they please because of security issues. We have the possibility to create spaces for those women where they can come and go. They can work the shifts that they need to work and still provide the wraparound services and increase the number from 12 beyond, doubling, even possibly tripling and beyond what we're capable of doing. Individual families who have a housing voucher, who've lost their house for one reason or another. Maybe they're renting space and it was condemned and the city has given them a voucher. We can accept those vouchers. Workforce, modest wage earners, our own workforce employees that have to commute hours, in some cases hours, to get here to work. A custodian at Grady Hospital, a first-year teacher's assistant at Morningside Elementary, a server and her child who work at the 1280 restaurant. That's workforce. That's workforce housing. Seniors on a modest fixed income who want to live in Midtown. I've met some women who live in Inman Park in Sweet Auburn who grew up there, who have houses there, who now can't afford the taxes based on their income, on their fixed income, because it's become gentrified over there. And they want to stay in the city. They want to remain here. And this gives them an opportunity to stay in a vibrant place. And persons on permanent disability who have income who can be supported in these spaces. This gives you a little sense of what the floor plan might look like with these individual units that are a little bigger than a nice hotel room, 5 of them per floor, that our women could occupy these. There's a total of 50 of these micro units that could be used by women or by others. You could also have 2 one-bedroom apartments, 3 two-bedroom apartments, and a 3-bedroom apartment. By the way, that is Grady School. That's Morningside, that's Inman, that's Grady. One of the best trios of schools in the system. A coveted spot for people. Can you imagine a workforce person who has 2 kids, a single mom, being able to live right here in Midtown? She works at the museum. She's a security officer full-time. She can now live right where she works, save money that way, and send her kids to the best part of the system, the schools in the best part of the system. Community Ministries also expands from the 2nd floor to the 3rd floor, 2 floors now. The exposed glass. If you've ever been in the waiting room, that may be the 2nd most unchristian room on our campus. It's no windows. It's crowded. It's not a place that I would want to be, let alone where you would want to be, where folks know that they need the services, and we do our best with what we have. But we can create brand new waiting room space that doubles the waiting room so nobody has to wait outside in the rain. And they can come in, and through natural light, many deal with mental health issues, natural light, the ways in which they can be exposed to that, totally is a game changer with how we administer our services. The 2nd and 3rd floor would be, as I said, community ministry space. We double the size of community ministry space. We've outgrown the Smith Building 2nd floor. That is just plain and simple. Tricia Pasuth is here, who directs our community ministries. We are out of space. You go to the 3rd floor, I'm getting the 5-minute sign from the back. You move Samaritan Counseling to the 4th floor, move Child Spring to the 4th floor, repurpose those offices as shared community space for those organizations and perhaps others down the road as the women move across to our new space in the tower. So we're able to do the things that we need to do, both from a community ministry perspective, expanding the amount of square footage, and also meeting the needs and growing capacity to meet those needs. This gives you, again, that sense of dignity to walk in off of Art Center instead of the fire escape where you walk toward the back here along a beautiful walkway right into the 2nd floor. This now allows us, I'm looking at the 2nd level of Art Center, this is Art Center Way right here. This is the Smith Building. This is currently community ministries. We'd have our barbershop, we'd have our showers, we expand some of that. We'd also be able to create a food store and a clothing store. Instead of handing out bags and we just give people what we want to give them, they'll have the dignity of shopping. They'll have the dignity of selecting food because they know their food allergies and they know what they can and can't eat. They know what they like and what they don't like. And perhaps even charge a minimal fee, $1 a bag, to create dignity for those who are coming shopping at our store, to give them more of an experience that you're a human being who has desires, who has wants just like everybody else. We can create that because we're expanding to the third level, which here again, community ministries in the Smith building, offices, mentoring rooms, administrative, mail, etc. So doubling the footprint of the Smith building. I knew that this was going to be verbose. I knew this was going to be a lot of information. I also knew that there'd be very little time to talk. And chances are that some of the questions aren't answerable at this time. But here's what I want to do. I want to encourage you to go online, to look at this presentation, go through the deck. What you'll also find on the deck are the additional floors of each of the levels on this campus, on this side of the campus, 1328, the west side. That's the east side of the campus. And start to build your questions. And we're going to have some time next week to carve out to talk through some of those questions as we move through in a more rapid pace what is remaining with those 7 values. I know that seems a lot, but there's less to show you because you'll be able to see some of this ahead of time and look at the floor plans. Appreciate your attention, your interest, your prayers, and your support. This is heavy lifting. It's not done by one person. It's done by many, many people. So continue to pray for them. And I would encourage us, and I'd say this as your pastor, be open to the Spirit. I'm not sure if any of this is ever going to happen. I hope it does. I hope we can live into this. But I want us to be open to what the Holy Spirit may do in our time and in our midst at the corner of 16th and Peachtree. Thank you so much. See you in worship, or we'll see you in the world.